In the shadowed annals of invention, where the flicker of genius illuminates the void of human ambition, there lies a figure not cloaked in the armor of conquest, but in the electric hum of unseen forces. Forget the triumphant tales of wires and wheels that power our world. This is the innovator history chose to eclipse, a man whose mind birthed the currents of modernity, only to leave him adrift in obscurity, penniless and alone. Nikola Tesla, the prodigy who electrified the age, died forgotten in a New York hotel room, his visions unraveling like frayed coils in the night. Imagine, if you will, the storm-swept peaks of a distant empire, where thunder speaks not as wrath from the gods, but as the raw pulse of untamed energy. Tesla was no mere tinkerer in the glow of gaslight. He was the architect of an invisible revolution, wrestling with forces that would bind humanity to the stars, or chain it to the earth. His paradox haunts us still. A visionary so brilliant he outpaced his time, yet so fragile he shattered against it. In an era of iron and steam, he dreamed of wireless wonders, of power drawn from the air itself, only to watch his triumphs fade into the footnotes of lesser men's legacies. Why did the man who illuminated the world end in darkness? What unseen rivalries, what quirks of fate consigned his genius to the margins? This is no sanitized biography of bulbs and breakthroughs. It is the unvarnished chronicle of a soul at war with the mundane, a life where innovation clashed with indifference, and enlightenment met erasure. Tonight, we embark on a journey through the labyrinth of Tesla's existence, not as a linear march of milestones, but as a slow unraveling of the man behind the myth. We will trace the sparks of his childhood in the thunderous wilds of the Austrian Empire, where a boy's fevered visions first ignited against the rigid doctrines of his world. From there, we descend into the crucibles of his youth, the grinding universities of Europe, the clandestine experiments that nearly consumed him, and the transatlantic leap that hurled him into the maw of America's Gilded Age. We will dissect the core tempests of his career, the seismic rivalries with Edison, the polyphase miracles at Niagara, the audacious Wardenclyffe dream that promised to tether the globe in free energy, each event a forensic revelation of triumph laced with betrayal. Deeper still, we probe the philosophical forge within, where Tesla's mind evolved from mechanical marvels to metaphysical quests, chasing the symphony of the universe amid mounting isolation. And finally, we confront his legacy. The echoes in our electrified lives, the cinematic distortions, the academic reckonings that seek to reclaim what time obscured. This odyssey is not for the faint of curiosity. It demands we linger in the silences between innovations, feel the weight of ideas that reshaped reality yet broke their creator. Tesla's story is a mirror to our own era of fleeting fame and forgotten foundations, a reminder that genius, like lightning, strikes once and vanishes into the ether. But through it, we may glimpse the fragile thread connecting human aspiration to the infinite. So, settle into the quiet of this telling. Let the words draw you into the coil of his world, where every hum of current carries a whisper of what might have been. If Tesla's fire stirs something within you, the ache of unrealized potential, the thrill of defiant creation, then share this spark. Like, subscribe, and join the unseen network of those who refuse to let history's shadows claim its light. Together, we illuminate what was left in the dark. Now, to understand the man, we must first immerse ourselves in the cradle of his century, a world teetering on the brink of transformation. The late 19th century was no gentle epoch of progress. It was a forge of fire and friction, where empires clashed and machines rose like titans from the industrial haze. Picture Europe in the 1850s, the Austrian Empire, a sprawling mosaic of fractious kingdoms stitched together by Habsburg threads, stretched from the jagged Alps to the sun-baked plains of the Balkans. This was an age of awakening nationalism, where the echoes of the 1848 revolutions still reverberated like distant thunder, uprisings crushed, but seeds of discontent sown deep in the soil. Serbia, Croatia, Hungary, each territory chafed under Vienna's iron grip, their peoples bound by language and law, yet divided by the whims of distant monarchs. It was a powder keg veiled in Baroque splendor, where Orthodox faith clashed with Catholic dogma, and the Ottoman shadow lingered like a fading spectre on the southern frontiers. Into this volatile tapestry was woven the fabric of science and society, a worldview shaped by the Enlightenment's lingering glow and the Romantic revolt against it. Darwin's shadows loomed, challenging biblical certainties. Marx's spectres stirred the factories belching smoke across Manchester and Vienna. Yet, in the rural heartlands, tradition held sway like an unyielding current. Electricity itself was a nascent phantom. Faraday's coils and Volta's batteries, mere curiosities in lecture halls, far from the peasant hearths where superstition reigned. Invention was the domain of the elite. British engineers with their steam behemoths, French chemists unraveling atoms, but whispers of a new force stirred. Telegraphs spanning continents, arc lights flickering in Paris boulevards, heralding an era where man might harness the heavens' fury. It was amid these tensions that Nikola Tesla entered the world on a stormy midnight in 1856 in the village of Smiljan, a speck in the Croatian military frontier. His father, Milutin, was a Serbian Orthodox priest, a man of stern intellect and unyielding piety, whose sermons wove scripture with the rigor of logic. Milka, his mother, illiterate yet ingenious, mended the household with inventions born of necessity. Egg beaters from wood, churns from leather, her hands a quiet testament to untapped brilliance. The family, squeezed between church duties and 7 children, embodied the era's contradictions, faith as anchor, curiosity as undercurrent. Young Nikola, the 4th son, arrived amid lightning that his mother later claimed marked him for greatness or peril. The air crackled with omen. The boy would grow to see storms not as divine ire, but as symphonies of plasma and potential. This was the crucible, a borderland where Slavic resilience met imperial oversight, where the Church's moral compass guided daily rhythms yet clashed with the encroaching tide of rationalism. Tesla's early years unfolded in isolation's embrace. Rural labors, orthodox rituals, the endless drone of Latin lessons. Yet even then, the prodigy stirred. At 3, he dismantled a clock. By 5, visions plagued his sleep, mechanical fantasies so vivid they blurred with reality. Trauma shadowed these beginnings. The death of his elder brother Dane in a riding accident, a loss that etched guilt into the child's psyche, fueling a relentless drive to eclipse the ordinary. Here, in the interplay of piety and invention, loss and longing, the foundations of Tesla's worldview took root, a blend of mystical intuition and empirical zeal, forever at odds with the world's prosaic grind, and that changed everything. For in this forgotten corner of empire, a spark was kindled that would arc across oceans, illuminating the path to modernity while consuming its bearer in flames unseen. In the hush of Smiljan's thatched eaves, where the wind whispered secrets through the linden trees, young Nikola Tesla first learned to navigate the treacherous currents between the seen and the unseen. Born on July 10, 1856, under a canopy of thunderheads that rent the midnight sky, his arrival was no quiet affair. Lightning forked across the heavens, illuminating the modest rectory like a divine proclamation or a warning etched in plasma. His mother, Juka Mandic, would recount it in hushed tones years later, the storm's fury as a harbinger, the babe's cries mingling with the roar as if he were already attuned to the cosmos's wild cadence. Yet myth quickly entangled fact in Tesla's origin tale. much as it did for ancient heroes born amid tempests. Was it mere coincidence, or the universe's first nod to a mind destined to capture its lightning? The boy himself, in later reflections, leaned toward the latter, seeing in that night the spark of his insatiable hunger for the invisible forces that governed all. The rectory in Smiljan was a world unto itself, a fragile bastion of Serbian Orthodox piety amid the Croatian frontier's rugged expanse. Milutin Tesla, Nikola's father, was no remote cleric. He was a polymath priest, his library a sanctuary of Serbian epics, classical philosophy, and ecclesiastical tomes that bridged the sacred and the secular. Tall and austere, with eyes that pierced like judgment, Milutin preached sermons that wove moral parables with the precision of a logician, demanding from his flock and his family an unyielding adherence to discipline. Yet beneath this rigor lay a quiet encouragement of intellect. He taught his sons to question, to debate, even as he steered them toward the cloth. For the Teslas, faith was not blind devotion, but a structured lens through which to view the divine order, a worldview that would imprint on Nikola a profound sense of harmony in nature, even as it clashed with his burgeoning empiricism. Juka, the unsung architect of the household, embodied a different genius, practical, intuitive, forged in the fires of rural necessity. Born into a family of inventors, her father a skilled craftsman on the Ottoman frontier, she had memorized the epic poetry of her people despite her illiteracy, reciting verses that stirred the imagination while her hands shaped tools from scraps. A butterfly loom for weaving, a mechanical egg beater from bent wire. These were her quiet revolutions, born not of blueprints but of an innate grasp of mechanics. Nikola watched her in awe, absorbing the lesson that creation need not wait for permission or parchment. It could emerge from the everyday, like sparks from struck flint. Yet her influence carried shadows, the weight of 8 pregnancies, the toll of poverty, the unspoken resignation of a brilliant woman bound to domesticity. In her, Tesla glimpsed the paradox of untapped potential, a theme that would haunt his own life. The brilliance eclipsed by circumstance. The family dynamic was a forge of contradictions. 7 children squeezed into rooms alive with the scent of beeswax candles and drying herbs. Dane, the eldest brother, shone as the golden child. Robust, charismatic, groomed for greatness in the church or beyond. Nikola, slender and introspective, trailed in his shadow, his early years marked by a fragility that set him apart. At 3, a bout of cholera nearly claimed him, leaving him with a constitution that teetered on the edge of collapse, fevers that blurred the boundary between waking and delirium. These illnesses were no mere ailments. They were portals to visions, mechanical apparati unfolding in his mind with hallucinatory clarity. He would describe them later as flashes of light, revealing intricate gears and levers, so vivid they compelled him to recreate them in clay or wood. But such gifts came laced with torment. The boundary between imagination and obsession blurred, planting seeds of the isolation that would define him. Trauma struck deepest in 1863 when Dane, at 12, perished in a freak riding accident, a horse bolting through the village, hurling the boy against a beam in the family barn. The details remain shrouded, pieced from family lore. A moment of youthful exuberance turned fatal. Dane's skull fractured in an instant. Nikola, just 7, was not merely bereft. Guilt gnawed at him, an irrational conviction that his own unspoken envy had somehow willed the tragedy. "I was nearly drowned in tears," he wrote in his autobiography, the words heavy with the weight of survivor's remorse. Milutin, devastated, retreated into stoic silence, channeling grief into fervent prayer. Juka, ever the pillar, masked her sorrow behind ceaseless labor. For Nikola, the loss was a psychic fracture. Dane's absence left a void he filled with relentless self-improvement, vowing silently to honor the brother he could never eclipse. Psychologists might later frame it as a catalyst for his perfectionism, the drive to transcend human limits born from the fear of inadequacy. In the orthodox tradition of the Teslas, death was not an end but a transition, yet for the boy it underscored life's fragility, a theme that echoed through his later disdain for the body's frailties, his preference for the mind's ethereal realm. Education in such a backwater was rudimentary, a patchwork of home lessons and village schooling. Milutin tutored Nikola in languages, Serbian, German, Latin, the words flowing like rivers through his prodigious memory. Arithmetic came alive as patterns, geometry as divine architecture. But formal schooling began in nearby Gospic, where the military frontier's strictures imposed a regimen of drills and dogma. At 10, transferred to the lower real gymnasium, Tesla excelled in mathematics and physics, his mind a vortex drawing in concepts like iron filings to a magnet. Yet rebellion simmered, the rote memorization chafed against his intuitive leaps. He devoured forbidden texts on electricity, smuggling volumes from his father's library. Experiments followed, crude batteries from copper and zinc, sparks coaxed from static-charged amber, each a small defiance of the mundane. Peers mocked his absent-mindedness, his habit of wandering fields lost in thought, but teachers saw the spark. A boy who solved differential equations intuitively, who visualized solutions in 3 dimensions before committing them to paper. These years were not without darker undercurrents. Adolescence brought compulsive tendencies, obsessions with the number 3, rituals to ward off imagined calamity that hinted at the neurological tempests to come. A near-fatal bout with malaria in his mid-teens confined him to bed, where fever dreams amplified his visions, entire inventions materializing only to dissolve upon waking, leaving him frantic to recapture them. Family pressures mounted. Milutin urged the priesthood, seeing in his son's intellect a vessel for divine service. But Nikola's heart pulled elsewhere, toward the hum of unseen energies, the promise of harnessing nature's fury. A clandestine reading of Goethe's Faust ignited this divergence, the tale of boundless ambition mirroring his own restless soul. Irony laced these origins. Born to piety, he would chase a secular godhood. Shaped by loss, he pursued immortality through ideas. By 17, in 1873, Tesla left Gospic for higher studies in Karlovac, the seed of wanderlust already sprouting. The boy from Smiljan was no longer a child of storms. He was a vessel charged with potential, ready to arc toward greater horizons. Yet the roots ran deep, piety's discipline, invention's intuition, trauma's forge, imprinting a worldview of cosmic order amid human chaos, and that changed everything. For from these humble origins, Tesla's mind began to uncoil, visions multiplying like fractals in the void, propelling him toward a destiny where genius and fragility would entwine in eternal tension. As the mists of adolescence lifted from the Croatian frontier, Nikola Tesla stepped into the wider world. His mind a coiled spring of untamed visions, ready to unleash forces that would either propel him to the pinnacle of invention or hurl him into the abyss of rejection. 17 years old in 1873, he crossed the threshold from Smiljan's insulated rhythms into the austere halls of the higher real gymnasium in Karlovac, a town perched on the Kupa River like a sentinel guarding the empire's fractious heart. Here, amid the neoclassical spires and the ceaseless murmur of multilingual students, Croats, Slovenes, Germans, the boy from the rectory confronted the rigid architecture of formal education, a system designed not to foster prodigies, but to mold them into compliant gears of the Habsburg machine. Tesla arrived with a satchel of self-taught theorems and a constitution still fragile from malaria's grip, yet his intellect burned with an intensity that set him apart, a lone spark in the dim lecture theatres where chalk dust hung like industrial fog. Karlovac was no idyllic retreat. It was a crucible of cultural collision, where the Austrian overlay clashed with Slavic undercurrents, and the air carried the faint tang of gunpowder from border skirmishes. Tesla boarded with a family of modest means, his days a grind of classical studies laced with mathematics that he devoured like forbidden fruit. Professors noted his peculiarities. The way he solved complex integrals not through rote formulas, but through mental rotations, visualizing equations as dynamic sculptures in the ether of his skull. He spoke little, preferring the solitude of walks along the riverbanks, where the water's flow mirrored the currents he yearned to command. Yet beneath this quietude simmered rebellion. The curriculum's emphasis on linguistics and history chafed against his mechanical obsessions. He smuggled dissections of pocket watches into his dormitory, reassembling them under candlelight until the mechanisms whispered secrets of precision and power. One evening, in a fit of inspiration, he rigged a crude water wheel from scavenged wood and twine, harnessing the Cooper's current to power a tiny fan, his first taste of converting nature's flow into human utility, a harbinger of the polyphase dreams to come. But the body, that treacherous vessel, betrayed him early. Exhaustion from overstudy triggered a collapse in his final year, hallucinations returning with feverish vengeance. Gears meshing in infinite arrays, electrical arcs bridging voids in his vision. Confined to bed, he bargained with his father, "Promise me engineering studies and I will recover." Milutin, ever the strategist, relented, seeing in his son's plea a path to redirect that restless genius toward something practical, away from the priesthood's cloistered calm. In 1875, Tesla enrolled at the Austrian Polytechnic in Graz, the imperial heartbeat of technical education, where steam engines thrummed like mechanical hearts and the air hummed with the scent of oiled iron and coal smoke. Graz was a revelation and a torment, a city of baroque facades masking the raw pulse of industrialization, where students from across the empire debated thermodynamics amid the clatter of trams and the distant wail of factory whistles. Under Professor Jacob Pöschl, Tesla plunged into electrical engineering, his mind igniting at the sight of the Gramme dynamo, a direct current generator that spun copper coils in magnetic fields to birth electricity from motion. In lectures, he dissected its inefficiencies with surgical precision, arguing that alternating current could supplant the direct, allowing transmission over vast distances without the ponderous losses of wires thick as cables. Pöschl dismissed him as a dreamer, the class tittering at the Serbian upstart's audacity, but Tesla's conviction was ironclad, forged in solitary nights, poring over Maxwell's equations, smuggled from the library. He redesigned the dynamo in his imagination, visualizing a multi-phase system where currents shifted in harmonious waves like the polyphonic chants of his childhood church. Experiments followed in secret. Borrowing a generator, he modified its commutator until it ran without the sparking friction that plagued its kin, achieving a self-sustaining rotation that mesmerized him for hours. It was as if the machine lived, he later reflected, the words laced with the awe of a man touching the divine through brass and wire. Yet genius exacted its toll. Gambling away his tuition fees in a haze of student bravado, bets on billiards that spiraled into obsession, forced him to drop out after 2 years, the weight of failure pressing like a vice on his fragile frame. Wandering to Prague in 1879 for a brief stint at Charles Ferdinand University, he audited philosophy and physics, absorbing Kant's critiques of pure reason amid the city's labyrinthine alleys, where gas lamps flickered like hesitant stars. But formal paths eluded him. Poverty and health, another collapse, this time neuralgia racking his nerves, drove him to menial labor in Maribor, then Budapest, where he toiled as a draftsman for a telegraph company. The work was drudgery, sketching insulators under the flicker of arc lights, inhaling the acrid bite of chemicals, yet it honed his discipline, teaching him the humility of the workshop floor. In 1881, amid the Danube's languid curve, epiphany struck during a sunset stroll. Visualizing his alternating current motor, he sketched it feverishly on the ground with a stick, stator and rotor in perfect synchrony, the principle of rotating magnetic fields crystallizing like lightning from cloudless sky. Colleagues dismissed it as fantasy, but Tesla knew. This was the key to wireless power, to energy unbound by the Earth's crude conduits. Fate's currents pulled him to Paris in 1882, the city of light, now aglow with electrical experiments at the Continental Edison Company. Here, under the shadow of the Eiffel Tower's nascent frame, Tesla labored as an engineer, troubleshooting dynamos for the telephone lines threading Europe. The boss, Charles Batchelor, recognized the spark, a young man who fixed circuits intuitively, as if communing with the electrons themselves. Batchelor's endorsement became Tesla's transatlantic passport. "I know two great men," he wired to Thomas Edison. "You are one, and this is the other." In June 1884, at 28, Tesla boarded a steamer for New York, the vessel cutting through Atlantic swells like a blade through fate's veil. He arrived penniless, recommendations crumpled in his pocket, the skyline of Manhattan, a jagged promise of opportunity laced with peril. Edison's lab awaited, a den of invention where direct current reigned supreme, oblivious to the alternating revolution brewing in the immigrant's mind. The collision was inevitable, two titans of differing visions orbiting the same electrified core. Edison, the pragmatic horologist turned mogul, embodied the era's gritty empiricism, bulbs glowing from trial and error, power plants sprawling across cities like mechanical empires. Tesla, the visionary mystic, sought elegance in nature's rhythms, currents flowing free as thought. Their alliance began inauspiciously. Tesla, tasked with improving Edison's inefficient dynamos, promised $50 upon success. He toiled through sleepless nights, the lab's hum a symphony of frustration, redesigning armatures until the machines purred with newfound efficiency. But when the bonus came due, Edison laughed it off as a joke, his words a slap that echoed the immigrant's perpetual outsider status. Betrayed, Tesla quit in 1885, wandering into manual labor, digging ditches for $2 a day in the biting New York winter. His hands blistered on shovel handles, while visions of grandeur swirled in his head. The irony cut deep. The man who would illuminate the world reduced to earth's toil, his intellect buried like seed in frozen soil. From these depths rose his first independent forge. In 1886, backed by patrons Robert Lane and Benjamin Vail, Tesla established the Tesla Electric Light and Manufacturing Company in Lower Manhattan, a cramped workshop alive with the sizzle of arcs and the ozone tang of high voltage. Here, he unveiled his alternating current motor and transformer patents, demonstrations that drew gasps from investors, lights blazing without direct wires, motors humming in polyphase ballet. The press hailed him as the electrical wizard, but rivals circled. Westinghouse, sensing the threat to Edison's DC monopoly, licensed Tesla's AC system in 1888 for $60 plus royalties, a pact that ignited the war of the currents. Edison, unyielding, smeared AC as deadly. Public electrocutions of animals staged in grim spectacles, warnings of death rays from the ether. Tesla countered with quiet brilliance. At the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, his polyphase system lit the fairgrounds in a cascade of 100 Zozeran bulbs, the white city aglow as if heaven had descended to earth. Yet triumph carried undercurrents of strain. The Niagara Falls project in 1895 marked his zenith. Westinghouse's turbines, powered by Tesla's AC generators, harnessed the cataract's roar into limitless energy. the first hydroelectric plant to transmit power miles away without loss. Standing amid the mist-shrouded roar, Tesla felt the pulse of creation, water's fury transmuted to electric harmony, a testament to man's dominion over nature's wild heart. But fragility shadowed grandeur. Financial woes mounted as royalties were slashed to save Westinghouse from bankruptcy, leaving Tesla destitute. And in the labs, experiments veered toward the esoteric, high-frequency oscillators shaking walls, X-ray visions piercing flesh, each a step from practical invention toward the metaphysical, where energy blurred with the soul's unseen currents. And that changed everything. For in the crucible of rivalry and revelation, Tesla's rise etched the blueprint of modernity, even as the first cracks of isolation spiderwebbed through his armored dreams. As the arc lights of the World's Fair dimmed into memory and the roar of Niagara's turbines faded to a distant hum, Nikola Tesla found himself at a precipice, not of steel and wire, but of the soul's uncharted depths. The man who had wrestled the Niagara's fury into submission, who had etched the Polyphase symphony across the American grid, now turned inward, his gaze shifting from the tangible coils of machinery to the ethereal vibrations that pulsed through the cosmos itself. It was the 1890s, and the gilded veneer of triumph began to crack under the weight of unseen burdens. Financial betrayals that left him adrift, patents pilfered by sharper-suited rivals, and a body that rebelled against the mind's relentless forge. Yet in this descent, Tesla did not shatter. He transmuted. The engineer evolved into the philosopher, the inventor into the seeker, chasing not mere power but the hidden harmonies that bound the universe in silent resonance. His laboratories, once alive with the crackle of high-voltage arcs, became sanctuaries of contemplation, where the hum of oscillators whispered revelations of a grander design, a world-view where electricity was no brute force, but the very language of creation. Picture him in those shadowed years, ensconced in the dim glow of his New York workshop on East Houston Street. The air thick with the metallic tang of ozone and the faint, acrid bite of scorched insulation. The Wardenclyffe Tower project, that audacious spire rising like a metallic obelisk on Long Island's shore, marked the pivot. Conceived in 1898 as a wireless transmission behemoth, it was no mere telegraph tower, but a portal to free energy, drawing from the Earth's own resonant frequencies to broadcast power across oceans without a single wire. Funded initially by J.P. Morgan's iron-fisted largesse, the structure soared to 187 feet, its copper dome a colossal capacitor poised to tap the ionosphere's vault. Tesla envisioned it as the nerve center of a global nervous system, messages, light, energy flowing freely, democratizing the very spark of progress. But Morgan's withdrawal in 1903, spooked by the absence of profitable patents, left the tower a skeletal ruin, dynamited in 1917 to settle debts. In its shadow, Tesla's philosophy crystallized. Humanity's greed had severed the cord to abundance, chaining invention to commerce's yoke. The present is theirs, he would muse in later writings. The future, for which I really worked, is mine. Here was the irony, sharp as a commutator's edge. The man who sought to liberate energy found his own visions imprisoned by the mundane. This inner evolution was no abrupt conversion, but a slow fermentation rooted in the mystical undercurrents that had always swirled beneath his empirical surface. From boyhood storms in Smiljan, Tesla had perceived nature not as a mechanical clockwork, but as a living symphony, vibrations interweaving like the polyphonic chants of his father's church. In the 1890s, as practical acclaim waned, he delved deeper into these intuitions, his experiments veering from utility toward the occult fringes of science. High-frequency currents, once tools for motors, became probes into the body's mysteries. He generated X-rays before Roentgen's fame, peering through flesh to the skeletal architecture within, marveling at the ether's permeability. "Everything is electricity," he declared in lectures that blended Faraday's rigor with Vedic echoes, his voice a measured cadence amid the audience's murmurs. Influenced by Swami Vivekananda's 1896 visit to his lab, Tesla bridged east and west, seeing in Hindu cosmology prana as vital force, akasha as infinite ether, a validation of his resonant theories. The universe, he posited, was a vast oscillator, planets humming in tuned frequencies, matter mere condensed waves awaiting dissolution. His 1891 Columbia College demonstration, passing millions of volts through his body without harm, was no mere spectacle. It was a philosophical act, proving the harmony between man and the infinite, the flesh a conductor rather than a barrier. Yet this enlightenment carried shadows, a melancholy grandeur born of isolation's deepening grip. As rivals like Marconi claimed wireless laurels, Marconi's 1901 transatlantic signal, suspiciously akin to Tesla's abandoned patents, the inventor retreated further into abstraction. Celibacy, long a vow to preserve mental purity, hardened into asceticism. He shunned touch, repelled by germs and the chaos of human proximity, his hotel rooms sanctuaries of sterile order. Pigeons became his confidants, their coos a surrogate for companionship, one white dove in particular evoking a lover's tenderness in his fragmented memoirs. Psychologically, the shift was profound. The trauma of Dane's death, the betrayals by Edison and Morgan, forged a worldview of cosmic justice amid earthly injustice. In essays like The Problem of Increasing Human Energy, 1900, Tesla framed invention as moral imperative. Energy conservation as spiritual law, waste, not the world's bounty, lest it consume you. He dreamed of death rays and earthquake machines, not as weapons, but as deterrents to war, tools to enforce peace through overwhelming resonance. Irony laced every revelation. The prodigy who electrified cities could not illuminate his own path, his genius a beacon dimmed by the very society it served. By the 1910s, as World War I ravaged Europe, Tesla's evolution reached its zenith, and nadir. Holed up in the Waldorf Astoria, then cheaper rooms at the New Yorker, he penned speculative tomes. My Inventions, 1919, a fragmented autobiography revealing the mind's architecture, eidetic visualizations so precise they bypassed sketches, birthing turbines in thought alone. He pondered teleforce beams to end conflict, particle accelerators to split atoms, decades before the bomb. But funding evaporated. The world, enthralled by automobiles and radios, dismissed his metaphysics as senility. Loneliness etched lines into his face, once handsome and hawkish, now gaunt with unspent vision. The philosopher in him accepted this. Progress was inevitable, his role merely to plant seeds in reluctant soil. The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, he prophesied, it will make more progress in 1 decade than in all previous centuries. Here was the paradox. A man who unlocked the atom's secrets in theory, yet died with his grandest dreams unplugged, the universe's symphony playing on without its conductor. In this forge of inner fire, Tesla transcended the inventor's mantle, becoming a seer adrift in his own prophecy. The brutality of history's indifference only sharpened his insight. Genius illuminates, but rarely warms its bearer. And that changed everything. For as the coils of his early triumphs unwound, Tesla's soul arced toward the infinite, leaving behind a legacy not of machines alone, but of a mind that dared to dream the cosmos electric. In the fading echoes of Tesla's solitary prophecies, where the hum of unfinished towers dissolved into the indifferent drone of a new century, his essence did not vanish into the ether. It refracted, splintering across the cultural firmament like light through a prism of forgotten genius. The man who died in 1943, penniless in room 3327 of the New Yorker hotel, his body discovered amid stacks of unpaid bills and pigeon feathers, left no grand estate, no vault of blueprints to rival Edison's Menlo Park trove. Yet his legacy endures not as a monument of marble, but as an invisible grid underscoring the modern world, the alternating currents that pulse through every home, the wireless signals that bind continents, the inductive dreams that propel our devices into the wireless age. It is an inheritance laced with melancholy, a brilliance reclaimed from obscurity through the slow grind of reinterpretation, where books resurrect the seer, films romanticize the martyr, and debates rage over the what-ifs that haunt his shadow. Tesla's story, once eclipsed by the victor's narratives, now flickers in the collective imagination, a cautionary symphony of innovation thwarted, yet eternally resonant. The first stirrings of revival came not from fanfare, but from the quiet persistence of his own words, preserved in fragments that outlived their author. His autobiography, My Inventions, serialized in Electrical Experimenter in 1919, offered a portal into the mind's architecture. Visions of turbines birthed whole in eidetic splendor, the boyhood storms that tuned his soul to nature's frequency. Penned amid isolation, it revealed not bombast, but vulnerability, the celibate's discipline, the pigeon's gaze as surrogate affection, the cosmic hunger that drove him to see electricity as life's primal verse. Later compilations, like the Tesla Papers, 1978, edited by Charlotte Muses, unearthed patents and lectures long buried in archives, from the 1891 high-voltage demonstrations to speculations on cosmic rays as messengers from the stars. These texts, dry as schematics yet poetic in their fervor, reframed Tesla not as a mad inventor, but as a philosopher-engineer, his prose weaving empirical precision with metaphysical awe. "The scientists of today," he wrote, "think deeply instead of clearly. One must be sane to think clearly, but one can think deeply and be quite insane." In academic circles, such writings sparked reinterpretations. Historians like Mark Cypher in Wizard, The Life and Times of Nikola Tesla, 1996, dissected the psychological undercurrents, linking his obsessions to neurological idiosyncrasies, perhaps a form of synesthesia that blurred senses into visionary fire. No longer the eccentric footnote, Tesla emerged as the architect of the second industrial revolution, his polyphase system, the unsung backbone of global electrification, powering factories from Shanghai to São Paulo without the fanfare of his rivals. Pop culture, that voracious mirror of human longing, seized Tesla's paradox with cinematic fervor, transforming the forgotten prodigy into an icon of tragic heroism. The 2003 documentary, Tesla, Master of Lightning, narrated in shadowed tones akin to this chronicle, peeled back the layers of myth, recreating the Wardenclyffe collapse with archival footage of the tower's implosion, a metallic requiem echoing his unfulfilled dreams. Feature films followed, each layering drama onto the bones of fact. Christopher Nolan's The Prestige, 2006, cast David Bowie as a spectral Tesla, his Colorado Springs lab a lair of arcane wonders, where electricity bends reality like a magician's ruse, underscoring the theme of genius as illusion shattered by envy. More reverent was the 2017 biopic The Current War, with Benedict Cumberbatch as Edison and Nicholas Hoult as Tesla, framing the rivalry as a Shakespearean clash, DC's brute empire against AC's elegant flow, culminating in Niagara's triumph as a momentary apotheosis. Yet these portrayals carry irony. Tesla, ever the outsider, is often softened into the noble sufferer, his celibacy romanticized as purity, his pigeon affinity as quirky pathos, glossing over the deeper fractures of betrayal and delusion. In graphic novels like Tesla, Man Out of Time, adapted in 2018, He strides as a steampunk oracle, coils and arcs exploding in vivid panels, appealing to a generation weaned on Marvel's electric anti-heroes. Even music pulses with his echo. They Might Be Giants' 1998 ode, wide as the sunshine, nods to his solar visions, while The Killer's human whispers of a world remade by unseen currents. Academic debates, those forensic arenas of the intellect, continue to wrestle with Tesla's enigma, peeling away misconceptions like layers of rusted patina. Long dismissed as a crackpot for his death ray obsessions, the Teleforce beam he pitched to governments as a peace enforcer capable of vaporizing aircraft from afar, scholars now contextualize it as prescient, akin to directed energy weapons in modern arsenals, born from his resonance theories that anticipated radar and microwaves. The Marconi controversy lingers, a shadow of intellectual theft. The US Supreme Court in 1943, days after Tesla's death, invalidated Marconi's radio patent in favor of Tesla's 1900 filings, affirming his wireless primacy, yet too late to alter the Nobel snub of 1915, when the prize went to Edison's ally, slighting the Serb's contributions. Misconceptions abound. The myth of Tesla as anti-capitalist Luddite ignores his patent savvy, amassing over 300 by 1900. The tale of him inventing the AC motor in a Budapest park overlooks years of iterative toil. Reinterpretations in journals like IEE Spectrum portray him as a bridge between Victorian empiricism and quantum frontiers, his ether fixation, not folly, but intuition of relativity's fields. Feminists reclaim Juka's influence, seeing in her ingenuity the maternal spark eclipsed by patriarchal narratives. Environmentalists hail his free energy quests as a lost blueprint for sustainable grids, untainted by fossil chains. Yet beneath this reclamation lies the melancholy core. Tesla's legacy is one of diffusion, not dominion. While Edison's face adorns museums, Tesla's graces the $100 Serbian dinar, a quiet nod from his homeland. Conspiracy theorists weave him into tales of suppressed tech, harp arrays as echoes of Wardenclyffe, free energy quashed by oil barons, fueling a cult of the what might have been. In our era of Tesla Motors and Neuralinks, Elon Musk's empire borrows the name as homage, yet underscores the irony. The original visionary who dreamed of abundance for all inspires billionaires chasing proprietary stars. Debates persist on his mental fragility, autism spectrum whispers, or mere exhaustion from a mind that never rested, reminding us that genius is as much burden as boon. In this mosaic of revival, Tesla's shadow lengthens, a reminder that history favors the loud, but truth hums in the wires beneath. His story challenges us to honor the innovators not with statues, but with the courage to pursue visions unbound by profit's coil. And that changed everything. For in the refracted light of legacy, the forgotten prodigy re-emerges, his electric soul a beacon against the gathering dark of our own unheeded dreams. As the refracted light of legacy fades into the quiet vigil of reflection, we stand at the threshold of Nikola Tesla's eternal enigma, a silhouette etched against the vast, indifferent canvas of time. The man who once commanded the Niagara's thunder, who wove the invisible threads of alternating currents into the fabric of our daily existence, now resides in the realm of echoes, his voice a faint oscillation in the ether, heard only by those who pause to listen amid the clamor of progress. This is no triumphant coda, no neatly tied bow on the narrative of genius. It is an immersion into the profound solitude that crowned his life, a meditation on the fragility of human aspiration when pitted against the unyielding machinery of fate. Tesla's journey, from the storm-lit rectory of Smiljan to the shadowed confines of a Manhattan hotel room, reveals not merely the arc of invention, but the deeper paradox of existence itself, that the brightest minds illuminate the world only to wander in their own gathering dusk, their light refracted through the prisms of misunderstanding and oblivion. Consider the final chapter of his earthly odyssey, those waning decades where the inventor's fire dimmed not from lack of fuel, but from the chill winds of isolation that seeped through every cracked ambition. By the 1920s, Tesla had become a spectral figure, haunting the fringes of New York's glittering skyline, his once vibrant laboratories reduced to memory, his patents bartered away like faded relics in a marketplace indifferent to their worth. He moved through a succession of hotel rooms, the Waldorf Astoria's opulence giving way to the New Yorker's austere anonymity, each a transient coil in the unraveling circuit of his days. The air in those spaces grew heavy with the scent of aged paper and faint ozone, remnants of experiments abandoned, sketches of grandiose schemes pinned to walls like maps to uncharted realms. Pigeons, those feathered emissaries from the city's chaotic skies, became his sole companions, their soft footfalls on window ledges a counterpoint to the silence that enveloped him. One in particular, a white dove with eyes like polished obsidian, captured his affection in a way that bordered on the mystical. He claimed it carried messages from the beyond. Its passing in 1923, a harbinger of his own encroaching end. In these moments, Tesla's philosophy reached its purest, most poignant distillation. The universe as an interconnected web of vibrations, where even the flutter of wings resonated with the cosmic hum, reminding him that connection transcended the flesh's frail barriers. Yet beneath this ethereal communion lay a profound human ache, the weight of unfulfilled symphonies pressing upon a frame worn thin by decades of defiance. Health, that perennial adversary, exacted its toll with merciless precision. Neuralgia twisting his nerves like overtaxed wires. Insomnia weaving nights into endless tapestries of contemplation. He subsisted on a diet of boiled vegetables and milk, eschewing the indulgences of the era's roaring excess. His asceticism a shield against the world's encroaching chaos. Correspondence dwindled to sporadic pleas for funding, letters to old patrons laced with the quiet desperation of a visionary adrift, proposals for teleforce beams to avert war, oscillators to harness planetary energies, each idea a spark in the gathering gloom. The world, meanwhile, hurtled forward on the rails he had helped lay, radios crackling with Marconi's borrowed signals, motors whirring in factories powered by his polyphase genius. Yet it passed him by, a parade where the architect marched unseen in the shadows. Irony coiled through these years, like a serpent in the garden. The man who dreamed of free energy for all found himself chained to poverty's yoke, his bills unpaid, his visions dismissed as the ravings of a relic. In 1931, at 75, he marked the occasion not with celebration, but with a lecture on the eternal fountain of youth, positing longevity through electromagnetic harmony, a prophecy born of his own fraying vitality, where the body's decay mirrored the soul's ascent toward the infinite. As the 1930s unfolded, Europe trembled under fascism's shadow, America grappled with depression's iron grip, and Tesla observed from his perch like a sentinel on a crumbling tower. World War II's outbreak in 1939 stirred faint embers of purpose. He offered his death ray concepts to the Allies, blueprints for a beam that could neutralize fleets from afar. But skepticism met his overtures. Governments wary of the eccentric, whose mind wandered realms beyond the battlefield's grim calculus. Isolation deepened into a philosophical fortress. He penned articles for the remnants of his audience, decrying the atom bomb's barbarity before its shadow fell, advocating a world system of wireless unity to bind humanity in peace. Peace can be achieved only by a natural order, he wrote, his words a measured cadence against the era's cacophony, envisioning energy as the great equalizer, drawn from the sun and earth to dissolve the chains of scarcity. But the lesson embedded here is stark, unyielding. Genius, untethered from the pragmatic, becomes a solitary beacon, visible to few amid the fog of expediency. Tesla's fragility, mental tempests that blurred obsession with insight, a celibate's renunciation that starved the heart even as it sharpened the mind, underscored the human cost of such transcendence. He was no infallible sage, but a vessel cracked by the very forces he sought to harness. His contradictions a mirror to our own, the drive to create clashing with the need for connection, enlightenment shadowed by erasure. In the hush of January 7th, 1943, Tesla slipped from this coil into the unknown, found in his room by a maid, 76 years of unquenched fire, extinguished in quiet anonymity. No crowds gathered. His nephew retrieved the body for a simple Orthodox rite, ashes later enshrined in Belgrade's Museum of Nikola Tesla, a modest urn beneath a dome that evokes the Wardenclyffe he never completed. The paradox lingers, heavy as the storm clouds of his birth. He who electrified the age died in darkness, his contributions diffused into the anonymous hum of modernity, unrecognized in his time yet indispensable to it. What does this teach us in our own era of fleeting innovations and forgotten foundations? That true progress is not the conquest of nature, but the harmony with its rhythms, a lesson Tesla embodied even as history consigned him to the margins. His life whispers a deep imperative. Pursue the unseen currents, but guard against the isolation they breed. Illuminate the world, yet seek the warmth of shared light. In the end, Tesla's story is a requiem for the unsung, a reminder that genius arcs brightest in solitude, but endures through the collective echo. And in that eternal tension between spark and shadow, we find not resolution, but the profound beauty of the human endeavor, a prodigy forever changing the world, even as the world, in its vast indifference, moves on. As the arc lights of the World's Fair dimmed into memory and the roar of Niagara's turbines settled into a rhythmic, almost meditative pulse, Nikola Tesla stood at the edge of a profound internal chasm where the clamor of external triumphs gave way to the silent interrogations of the soul. The 1890s marked not merely a deceleration in his inventive output, but a seismic shift in the very orientation of his being, from the conqueror of mechanical realms to the contemplative navigator of metaphysical vastness. He who had once bent the Niagara's primal fury to the will of wire and coil now turned his gaze upward, toward the invisible symphonies that orchestrated the stars, seeking in the ether's subtle vibrations a unity that transcended the brutal pragmatism of his earlier battles. This evolution was no serene ascension. It was a forge tempered by betrayal's sting, where financial ruin and personal isolation hammered the engineer's precision into the philosopher's introspection, revealing a mind that viewed electricity not as a tool of dominion, but as the primordial thread weaving the fabric of existence itself. In the shadowed confines of his laboratories, amid the fading glow of experimental arcs, Tesla began to unravel the paradox at his core. The power to illuminate the world carried with it the peril of eternal solitude, a brilliance that warmed others while leaving its source adrift in cold abstraction. Envision him in those pivotal years, retreating from the public stage to the intimate chaos of his Houston Street workshop, a space alive with the low thrum of oscillators and the sharp scent of ionized air, where coils of copper wire snaked like veins across workbenches cluttered with half-realized prototypes. The Wardenclyffe Tower, that colossal ambition, rising on the windswept bluffs of Shoreham, Long Island in 1901, embodied this turning point. A structure not of mere utility, but of cosmic aspiration, its mushroom cap of conductive metal designed to resonate with the Earth's own electrical heartbeat. Tesla poured his soul into its conception, envisioning a global network where energy flowed wirelessly, drawn from the planet's ionospheric envelope like manna from an unseen heaven, free to all who sought it. Funded at first by the titanic J.P. Morgan, whose financial empire spanned continents, the project promised to dissolve the barriers of distance and scarcity, broadcasting not just power, but the very essence of human potential. Yet Morgan's abrupt withdrawal in 1903, deeming it unprofitable without encumbering meters, left the tower a hollow sentinel, its skeletal frame dynamited in 1917 to pay creditors. In this collapse, Tesla's philosophy took root. The world's avarice had truncated a path to universal harmony, binding progress to the chains of commerce rather than liberating it. Nature, he reflected in private notes, operates through eternal cycles of giving and receiving. Man, in his greed, disrupts the flow. The irony was exquisite, cutting like a high-voltage discharge. The visionary who aimed to unchain energy found his dreams shackled by the very systems he sought to upend. This inward migration drew nourishment from the mystical currents that had long simmered beneath Tesla's empirical facade. Currents traceable to the thunderous nights of his Smiljan youth, where storms spoke to him as living entities rather than chaotic weather. As practical accolades receded, royalties slashed to salvage Westinghouse, patents contested by sharper legal minds, he immersed himself in explorations that blurred the line between science and the sacred. High-frequency alternators, initially devised for efficient transmission, evolved into instruments for probing the human form. In 1894, predating Röntgen's Nobel by a year, Tesla generated shadowy images of bones through flesh using vacuum tubes, the X-rays revealing the body's hidden architecture as if peeling back the veil of illusion. All matter is electricity in motion, he proclaimed in an 1891 lecture at Columbia University, his voice steady amid the auditorium's hush, demonstrating by passing 200 volts through his own frame, sparks dancing harmlessly across his skin like celestial fireflies. This was no parlor trick, but a philosophical manifesto affirming the body's conductivity to the universal field, the self as an extension of the infinite rather than its prisoner. Encounters with Eastern thought amplified this revelation. The 1896 visit of Swami Vivekananda to his lab ignited a synthesis, Tesla drawing parallels between prana, the vital life force of Vedantic law, and his resonant waves, Akasha's boundless ether mirroring the ionosphere he sought to harness. Planets, he theorized, were attuned oscillators in a grand cosmic orchestra, their orbits humming frequencies that echoed the polyphase rhythms of his motors. Matter itself a temporary condensation of vibrational energy awaiting dispersal into the void. Isolation, however, cast long shadows over this enlightenment, a creeping melancholy that transformed introspection into a fortress of solitude. As Guglielmo Marconi harvested fame from wireless transmissions, suspiciously derivative of Tesla's 1897 patents, culminating in the 1901 transatlantic signal that electrified the world, the inventor withdrew further, his celibate vows hardening into a near-total aversion to physical contact, germs and disorder repelling him like inverse magnetic poles. Hotel suites became his cloistered realms, pristine and pigeon-haunted, where the bird's gentle presence offered a purity untainted by human frailty. One dove, white as untrodden snow, held a special place in his affections, its flight patterns evoking messages from a higher plane, its death in 1923 a personal eclipse that mirrored his fading light. Psychologically, these years forged a worldview scarred by early traumas. The ghost of Brother Dane's accident fueling a perfectionism that bordered on torment, Edison's dismissal and Morgan's abandonment etching a narrative of cosmic retribution against earthly injustice. In his 1900 Century magazine article, The Problem of Increasing Human Energy, Tesla framed invention as a moral calculus. Energy as the soul's currency, to be amplified through efficiency and dissipated by waste, wore the ultimate entropy. He envisioned teleforce rays not as instruments of destruction, but as global deterrents, beams of concentrated particles to enforce peace by rendering aggression futile, precursors to modern directed energy, born from his faith in resonance as the key to universal order. Yet the paradox deepened. This seeker of harmony lived in discord with his age, his ideas dismissed as the effusions of eccentricity, the philosopher's clarity muddied by the inventor's unyielding drive. By the 1910s, as the guns of the Great War thundered across Europe, Tesla's inner evolution crested in a blend of prescience and pathos. From the Waldorf Astoria's gilded isolation, he drafted My Inventions, 1919, a mosaic of autobiography that laid bare the machinery of his mind, inventions gestating in flawless mental simulations, bypassing the crude intermediary of drawings, turbines spinning in the theater of imagination with the fidelity of reality. He speculated on particle beams to split atoms, cosmic rays as interstellar communiques, the universe, a self-sustaining dynamo where inertia yielded to vibrational primacy. Funding, once a torrent, now trickled to nothing. The era's fixation on automobiles and assembly lines relegated his metaphysics to obscurity. Loneliness carved furrows into his features, the once aquiline face now etched with the weariness of unshared burdens. In acceptance lay his deepest insight. Science, tethered to the physical, limped where the non-material beckoned. When the day comes, he foresaw in lectures dimmed by sparse attendance, that science studies the unseen forces, it will unlock progress undreamed. Here, the human fragility shone through, the celibate's renunciation, sharpening intellect at the cost of warmth, obsessions veering from genius to the brink of unraveling, a life where enlightenment arrived hand in hand with erasure. In this alchemical transmutation, Tesla shed the skin of the mere innovator, emerging as a seer attuned to the cosmos's silent score. History's brutality, in ignoring him, only honed the edge of his revelations. True power lay not in conquest, but in surrender to the eternal hum. And that changed everything. For as the outer world receded, Tesla's inner cosmos expanded, a solitary orbit where philosophy and physics entwined, illuminating the path he walked alone. In the lingering resonance of Tesla's solitary orbit, where the philosophical hum of his inner cosmos faded into the indifferent vastness of a world forever altered, yet blind to its architect, his essence did not dissipate like a spent charge. It persisted, a subtle undercurrent threading through the cultural and intellectual tapestries of the ages that followed. The inventor who slipped away in 1943, his final breaths drawn in the dim seclusion of a hotel room, strewn with unpaid notices and the soft detritus of pigeon companionship, bequeathed no opulent fortune, no sprawling institute to enshrine his name in bronze. Instead, his legacy unfolded as an invisible lattice, the alternating currents that now course unseen through the veins of every metropolis, the wireless pulses that knit our digital age into a global web, the inductive principles that whisper in the coils of smartphones and electric dreams. It is a heritage steeped in quiet irony, reclaimed not through the clamor of immediate acclaim, but through the gradual excavation of books that resurrect his voice, films that mythologize his silhouette, and pop-cultural echoes that transform the forgotten prodigy into a symbol of defiant brilliance. In this reclamation, debates simmer like low-voltage arcs over misconceptions that once consigned him to eccentricity's margins, academic reinterpretations that elevate him to the pantheon of unsung revolutionaries, and the enduring what-ifs that cast his life as a cautionary symphony of genius thwarted by the mundane. The resurrection began in the printed word. Those humble vessels that outlasted the man's fragile frame, preserving fragments of a mind too vast for its era. His own My Inventions, serialized in 1919 amid the post-war hush, offered an intimate autopsy of genius, eidetic visions birthing turbines in mental solitude, boyhood epiphanies amid Smiljan's storms, tuning him to nature's electric cadence, the celibate's renunciation as fuel for unyielding focus. Penned in isolation, its prose blended the precision of a patent with the poetry of a seer, revealing vulnerabilities, the pigeon's gaze as balm for human absence, obsessions with threes as neurological symphonies rather than madness. Decades later, compilations like John J. O'Neill's Prodigal Genius, 1944, drawn from interviews with Tesla's inner circle, painted a fuller portrait. The Wardenclyffe betrayal not as folly, but as a prescient bid for equitable energy. Morgan's Retreat, a microcosm of capitalism's short-sighted grip. Academic tomes followed, each a forensic reclamation. Mark Cypher's Wizard, 1996, dissecting psychological depths, linking synesthetic flashes to innovative fire. W. Bernard Carlson's Tesla, Inventor of the Electrical Age, 2013, grounding his metaphysics in rigorous engineering, portraying the death ray not as delusion, but as an early intuition of particle beams, echoing modern laser defenses. These volumes, dense with schematics and correspondence, dispel the myth of the lone crackpot, reframing Tesla as the bridge between Faraday's fields and quantum entanglement, his 300 patents, the unseen scaffolding of 20th century power grids. In Serbian editions and global translations, they honor the immigrant's roots, Juka's intuitive ingenuity elevated from footnote to foundational spark, her shadow inventions a quiet feminist counterpoint to patriarchal histories. Cinema, that grand alchemist of memory, seized Tesla's paradox with dramatic fervor, recasting the overlooked visionary as a tragic anti-hero, adrift in an age of ruthless pragmatism. The 1980 Yugoslav film The Secret Life of Nikola Tesla, starring Orson Welles as a brooding J.P. Morgan, delved into the Wardenclyffe saga with shadowy intrigue, arcs crackling across screens to evoke the tower's unbuilt promise, underscoring the theme of suppressed abundance. More luminously, the 2006 The Prestige conjured David Bowie as a ethereal Tesla, his Colorado Springs lab, a cavern of Tesla coils spitting blue fire, where electricity warps reality like a conjurer's deceit. A meditation on rivalry's cost, Edison's shadow looming as the era's unyielding antagonist. The 2017 The Current War, with its gaslit tension and thundering generators, pitted Cumberbatch's Edison against Holt's Tesla in operatic confrontation, Niagara's Cascade, a climactic baptism of AC triumph, though it softens the inventor's ascetic edges into poignant quirkiness. These portrayals, laced with visual poetry, the flicker of arc lights mirroring inner turmoil, romanticize his isolation, pigeons fluttering like spectral messengers. Yet they carry the weight of irony. Tesla, ever the outsider, becomes a cinematic martyr, his celibacy a noble vow, his downfall a critique of Gilded Age greed. In documentaries like PBS's Tesla Master of Lightning, 2000, archival reels of the tower's demolition play as elegy, narrated in hushed tones that echo this chronicle, inviting viewers to mourn the free energy utopia quashed by Prophet's coil. Pop culture, voracious and viral, amplified these echoes into a cult of electric reverence, embedding Tesla in the zeitgeist as the patron saint of underdogs and futurists. Graphic novels like The Thrilling Adventures of Lovelace and Babbage, 2015, cameo him as a steampunk sage. Coils entwining with Ada Lovelace's algorithms in alternate histories of boundless invention. Music channels his current, Muses, Knights of Sidonia, pulses with themes of cosmic energy, while Grimes' 2020 album Miss Anthropocene nods to his environmental prescience, free power as antidote to ecological entropy. In gaming, Tesla versus Edison duels in browser realms. Polyphase motors clashing with DC bulbs in stylized battles that educate through spectacle. Merchandise proliferates, coiled keychains, T-shirts emblazoned with AC/DC, while Elon Musk's Tesla Inc., named in homage since 2003, evokes the irony anew. Electric vehicles zipping on his principles, yet proprietary batteries mocking the wireless ideal. Conspiracy subcultures thrive in online forums, weaving harp antennas as Wardenclyffe airs, free energy suppressed by energy cartels, a folklore that romanticizes his marginalization, turning historical slights into narratives of heroic resistance. Yet these revivals fuel debates that crackle like ungrounded wires, probing the misconceptions that long dimmed his light. The notion of Tesla as anti-commercial dreamer ignores his patent battles, amassing fortunes only to squander them on grander visions. The mad scientist trope, born from tabloid tales of earthquake machines, overlooks his rationalist core, oscillators as seismic probes rather than doomsday devices. The Marconi feud persists. The 1943 Supreme Court reversal, affirming Tesla's radio primacy, came posthumously. The 1915 Nobel snub, awarded to Edison's Circle, a lingering emblem of institutional bias. Academics clash over his mental landscape. Was it high-functioning autism, fueling eidetic precision, or mere exhaustion from a brain wired for infinity? Environmental scholars hail Wardenclyffe as a lost sustainable paradigm, wireless grids unmarred by transmission losses, while economists decry its utopian naivety, blind to market realities. Feminists reclaim Juka's legacy, her mechanical improvisations the maternal voltage eclipsed by Sun's fame. Serbian nationalists elevate him as ethnic triumph, his Belgrade museum a pilgrimage site. These contentions, far from resolving his enigma, enrich it, reminding us that legacy is not static monument, but living oscillation, debated in journals and TED Talks where Tesla's shadow challenges our era's innovations, AI and renewables echoing his quests, yet risking the same isolation if divorced from collective warmth. In this intricate web of reinterpretation, Tesla's inheritance endures as a subtle force, powering the unseen while haunting the seen with its unfulfilled promise. Books bind his words, films flicker his form, culture hums his frequency, yet the melancholy persists. The prodigy who changed the world died forgotten, his light refracted through prisms of belated awe. And that changed everything, for in the mosaic of modern echoes, Tesla's forgotten fire reignites, a persistent current urging us to honor the unseen architects who shape our illuminated shadows. As the mosaic of modern echoes settles into the quiet hush of contemplation, where Tesla's persistent current flickers like a distant arc in the gathering night, we arrive at the profound solitude of his ultimate legacy, a silhouette not triumphant, but etched in the subtle patina of what endures beyond the clamor. The prodigy who once commanded the invisible forces of the cosmos, who wove the threads of alternating energy into the very sinews of our electrified existence, now invites us into the shadowed recesses of reflection, where the weight of his life presses upon the soul like the unyielding hum of an abandoned generator. This is no mere epilogue to a tale of invention. It is an immersion into the inexorable dance between brilliance and oblivion, a meditation on the human condition where genius arcs across the void only to dissipate into the indifferent ether, leaving behind not monuments of marble, but the faint resonant tremor of unrealized harmony. Tesla's Odyssey, From the thunder-kissed cradle of Smiljan to the sterile confines of a Manhattan hotel room, unfurls not as a linear conquest, but as a philosophical spiral, descending into the depths of isolation while ascending toward the infinite, reminding us that the light we cast upon the world often casts longer shadows upon ourselves. Envision the final cadence of his days, those elongated twilights in the 1930s and early 1940s when the inventor's world contracted to the measured rhythm of a single room, the air thick with the musty scent of yellowed papers and the soft, intermittent coo of pigeons alighting on rain-slicked sills. Tesla, now a wraith in his own narrative, navigated the corridors of the New Yorker hotel not as a conqueror, but as a sentinel guarding the remnants of visions that had outpaced his era's grasp. His body, that frail conduit for a mind of boundless voltage, betrayed him with increasing insistence, neuralgia coiling through his nerves like frayed wiring, insomnia stretching nights into vast starless expanses where thoughts of cosmic resonators mingled with the ache of earthly neglect. He sustained himself on sparse rituals, warm milk sipped slowly by the window, vegetables boiled to bland uniformity, a deliberate austerity that echoed the celibate discipline of his youth, now refined into a philosophy of preservation amid decay. Pigeons remained his steadfast interlocutors, their iridescent feathers catching the pallid light of desk lamps. One white dove in particular, embodying a purity he could no longer find in human company, its gaze a mirror to the soul's untrammeled communion with the unseen, its eventual passing in 1923, a quiet omen that the bridges to the infinite were thinning. In these sequestered hours, Tesla's introspection deepened into a crystalline clarity, unmarred by the world's distractions, yet laced with the melancholy of irrelevance. He corresponded fitfully with distant admirers, his letters a blend of urgent prophecy and subdued resignation. Entreaties for funding to revive the Teleforce beam, that particle stream envisioned as a guardian of peace, capable of vaporizing threats from afar without the barbarity of bombs. Musings on the world system, a wireless web to unite humanity in equitable energy, drawn from the sun's ceaseless bounty and the earth's resonant core. The brutality of history loomed large in these reflections, the Great Depression's iron clamp squeezing innovation into survival, the spectre of impending war in Europe casting long shadows over his anti-conflict ideals. He decried the atom's harnessing as a perversion of nature's order, foreseeing in 1937 the cataclysmic release it would unleash, his words a prescient whisper against the tide of militarized science. Yet, inevitability clung to him like static charge. The age he had electrified hurtled toward mechanized slaughter, radios blaring propaganda on frequencies he had pioneered, motors driving tanks across bloodied fields powered by his polyphase genius. Irony threaded through every contemplation. The man who sought to dissolve scarcity through free flow found himself ensnared in personal penury, his hotel tab mounting like unpaid cosmic debts, evictions hovering like storm clouds over his fragile sanctuary. Psychologically, this denouement was a forge of profound contradictions, where early traumas resurfaced as philosophical anchors, the ghost of Dane's untimely fall fueling a relentless quest for perfection, now transmuted into acceptance of the universe's impartial rhythms. The betrayals by Edison and Morgan etching a narrative of solitary enlightenment, where human greed contrasted sharply with nature's selfless abundance. Tesla viewed his isolation not as defeat, but as the necessary solitude of the seer, celibacy and aversion to touch, preserving the mind's purity, obsessions with patterns and threes as attunements to the cosmos's hidden geometry. In rare public utterances, like his 1930s lectures on longevity through electromagnetic balance, he posited the body as a tunable instrument, decay merely a dissonance awaiting harmonic correction, a vision born from his own fraying vitality, where the flesh's fragility underscored the soul's potential immortality. The grandeur of his early triumphs, Niagara's roar harnessed, Chicago's fairgrounds ablaze, now evoked a wistful melancholy, the polyphase miracles diffused into the anonymous grid, benefiting millions while enriching none, least of all their architect. Here lay the deep lesson, stark and unyielding. Innovation's fruits ripen for the collective harvest, yet the sower often wanders the orchard alone, his hands empty, save for the seeds of what might have been. On January 7th, 1943, in the quiet interlude between breaths, Tesla departed this realm at 76, his passing noted in the papers as a footnote to wartime headlines, his body discovered amid the clutter of unfinished sketches and avian mementos. No grand funeral procession marked his exit. A simple Orthodox service sufficed. His ashes later interred in Belgrade's Tesla Museum, an urn beneath an orb that symbolizes the Wardenclyffe dome he never saw rise. The paradox endures. Heavy as the midnight storm of his birth, he who illuminated the darkness of the 19th century died in obscurity's embrace, his contributions the invisible backbone of modernity. Every light switched on, every signal transmitted, a silent testament to his touch. What profundity does this impart to us in an age of rapid obsolescence and digital phantoms? That true genius resides not in the glare of recognition, but in the quiet persistence of ideas that outlive their originators, that the pursuit of harmony demands vigilance against isolation's creep, that history's brutality spares no one, yet the human spirit, fragile as it is, arcs toward the infinite with defiant grace. Tesla's life whispers this eternal tension. To change the world is to invite its shadows, but in embracing the unseen currents, we may yet find the light that warms both self and other. And in that profound interplay of spark and silence, the Prodigy's forgotten fire lingers, a beacon for those willing to trace its path through the gathering dusk.